Okay, good morning, everybody. We're here today to announce the Warrant Service Officer Program, which is a new national program that will help sheriffs and county jails across Florida and across the United States address criminal illegal aliens and their adverse impact on public safety in our state and in our country. Before I make some opening remarks, I want to introduce those who are with us here today and those that you'll be hearing from. From ICE headquarters in Washington, D.C., we have Deputy Director Dave Marin. Governor DeSantis had planned to be with us today, but was unable to make it due to a meeting at the White House, and we are honored to have Lieutenant Governor Jeanette Núñez. This issue also affects inmates in the state prison system, and we are pleased to have Florida Department of Corrections Secretary Mark Inch with us today. You also hear from Polk County Sheriff Grady Judd. Sheriff Judd is the president of the Major County Sheriffs of America, and I'm honored to serve with Sheriff Judd on the MCSA Executive Board. Representing the National Sheriff's Association, you'll hear from Executive Director Jonathan Thompson. Jonathan has been an integral part of this effort with ICE over the last 2.5 years. I also want to introduce the other sheriffs who are with us today who will be participating in this Warrant Service Officer program. With us is Columbia County Sheriff Mark Hunter, who's the president of the Florida Sheriff's Association, Levy County Sheriff Bobby McCallum, who is chairman of the Florida Sheriff's Association Board of Directors. Also with us is Brevard County Sheriff Wayne Ivey, Walton County Sheriff Mike Atkinson, who's also a member of the National Sheriff's Association Board of Directors, Charlotte County Sheriff Bill Promell, Sarasota County Sheriff Tom Knight, Manatee County Sheriff Rick Wells, and representing Hernando County Sheriff Al Nienhuis is Chief Deputy Mike Maurer. We will hold all questions until after everybody has had a chance to make their remarks. Following those remarks is that the sheriffs who are participating in the WSO program that we're announcing today will take their seats at these tables and sign the Warrant Service Officer agreements that have already been signed by Deputy Director Marin. We'll then, after the agreement signing, we'll open it up for any questions that members of the media have. But before we go any further, I want to begin providing an overview of the national importance of the Warrant Service Officer Program, why we are here, and exactly what this is that we're announcing today. Now, be clear, there's plenty of room for broad discussion and debate on the complex illegal immigration topic. But what we are discussing today is not about people who are simply here illegally, and it's not about the politics of illegal immigration. People who are simply here illegally are at the core of the immigration dilemma across this country. But there is no dilemma with people who are here illegally and committing crime. They are criminal illegals who must be removed from this country. This is entirely about public safety and about law enforcement working together so that we that are sworn to protect the community can achieve all of our goals. And as it relates to the estimated 1 million criminal illegals that are here in the United States, that we remove them so they can't wreak havoc on the communities. Now, most sheriffs in this country believe that criminal illegals are a serious public safety threat and that we need to support ICE in its effort to remove these criminal illegals from the United States. And while immigration enforcement is solely the responsibility of the federal government, public safety is a responsibility of all law enforcement officers. And state and local law enforcement must work with our federal partners to ensure we never again face a Kate Steinle or a Sergio Martinez situation. Now, most everybody is familiar with that unfortunate situation with Kate Steinle, where she was killed out in San Francisco after the sheriff in San Francisco County refused to honor the ICE detainer. But those of you that are unfamiliar with the Sergio Martinez situation, he's an illegal alien, a criminal illegal alien, that was arrested in Portland, Oregon in 2017. And after he got out of jail, because the sheriff wouldn't honor the immigration detainer, he got out of jail and he raped a 65-year-old woman. Martinez had been deported 20 times previously. He had an extensive arrest record, and because the jail didn't honor the detainer, a 65-year-old woman was raped. Law enforcement officers are also endangered by criminal illegals. In February of this year, a deputy sheriff in Napa County, California, stopped Javier Hernandez Morales. Morales was a criminal illegal who had previously been deported 3 times and the subject of 4 prior ICE detainer requests, all of which were not honored by the jail. Morales had prior gun charges, and there was an outstanding warrant for his arrest when he was stopped by the deputy a couple of months ago. Because the ICE detainers were not honored, Morales was on the street where he opened fire on the deputy. Fortunately, the deputy was not injured and she returned fire, killing Morales. These criminal illegals must not be allowed to wreak havoc in our communities and endanger our law enforcement officers by repeatedly committing crimes while unlawfully in our country. Criminal illegals simply should not be allowed to remain, and they should not enjoy any sanctuaries or other places where they can evade the laws of the United States. This is a country of laws and must be followed by everyone. Now, for over 25 years, ICE issued these immigration detainers to local jails and state prisons. And through these detainers, ICE asked that we hold these criminal illegals so that they could pick them up upon completion of their state charges, as opposed to having to chase them down on the street. Most sheriffs, most county jails, most state prisons across the country, they gladly honor the detainers. Then in 2014, it all changed. The federal courts held that the detainers did not provide an independent legal basis for us to hold these criminal illegals for ICE to pick up. After the 2014 court decisions, many sheriffs and prisons stopped honoring the detainers, and the Obama administration made decisions and implemented policies that strained the relationship between ICE and sheriffs across this country. Sheriffs were between a rock and a hard place. We had to choose between releasing criminals from our jails to commit more crimes and victimize our communities, or hold these criminal illegals, risk being sued and having to pay six-figure judgments excuse me, for civil rights violations. Both options are a terrible place to be as a sheriff. In 2017, President Trump entered an executive order that resulted in ICE policy changes, which corrected the flawed Obama-era policies that the courts held illegal. Under the 2017 revised detainer system, detainers were only to be issued based on probable cause that an illegal alien was removable, and all detainers had to be accompanied by arrest warrants. This was a move in the right direction, but there are legal impediments to local law enforcement officers serving the ICE arrest warrants, and that resulted in many sheriffs being in the same place, still unable to honor the detainers. This meant that in many cases, criminals were still being released on the street. Sheriffs worked closely with ICE for the last 2.5 years on solutions that will allow us to lawfully hold these criminal illegals in our jails for up to 48 hours. So that ICE has an opportunity to come and take them into custody. We've had to come up with these solutions because Congress has not acted to pass the laws necessary to close the gaps identified in the 2014 court decisions. And it's obvious that Congress has no will to fix anything related to illegal immigration. In January 2018, standing right here in this room with then ICE Director Tom Holman, we announced the Basic Ordering Agreement, or BOA, process that permits sheriffs to house criminal illegals booked into our jails by ICE. The BOA is a contractual housing agreement between sheriffs and ICE where we can hold inmates so that ICE can pick them up and begin those removal proceedings. The BOA process has worked very well here in Florida, and today there are over 30 sheriffs, 30 counties in Florida that are part of the BOA process. But what we announced today is an even better option for sheriffs to help ICE keep criminal illegals off the street. The Warrant Service Officer program that we're announcing today allows specially designated deputy sheriffs, such as the deputies here with us, who will work in the jails to serve the ICE arrest warrants that are attached to those 48-hour detainer requests. This is the best of all available options to lawfully honor the detainers because it is easy to implement and it is legally unchallengeable. The only question in this situation is whether there's a valid warrant and whether the person who is serving the warrant is authorized to do so. And these deputies and others across Florida and across the country will clearly be authorized to do so. The authority for this Warrant Service Officer program comes from the laws that allow ICE to deputize local law enforcement officers, and in this case, it's deputies who work in the jail. Now, people often refer to this as the 287G program. The full 287G program is time-consuming, it's costly to implement. It requires we send deputies to 30 days worth of training in South Carolina, and ICE's capacity to do this training is very limited. Under this Warrant Service Officer program, deputies will be trained at their home agencies as warrant service officers, and the training lasts 1 day. This makes it easy and cost-free to train a sufficient number of deputies to ensure we always have somebody on duty that can serve these ICE warrants. Now, I want to stress in the strongest possible terms that this whole program, this entire situation, only applies to people who committed a crime. Only applies to somebody that's in jail, and thus applies to anyone who is a criminal illegal. This has nothing, and I can't stress this strongly enough, has nothing to do with police officers or deputy sheriffs or state troopers or anyone else on the street or in the community acting as an immigration officer, conducting immigration investigations, or making immigration arrests. There is so much false information being spread about this, and this really inaccurate fear-mongering must stop because it hurts the community. This is about criminal illegals who are in the jail. So if you're here illegally and you obey the laws of the state, none of this applies to you. But if you're here in this country illegally and you commit crime and you end up in a county jail or a state prison, then we will, as we should, help ICE remove you from the United States. So this is a great day for the rule of law in this country, and it sends a message that state and local law enforcement are unified with our federal partners to lawfully ensure the removal of criminal illegal aliens. There must never again be a victim like Kate Steinle, or a situation that lets a Sergio Martinez rape a 65-year-old woman, or a law enforcement officer needlessly endangered by a criminal illegal alien, all of which can be easily prevented by the solution and letting ICE do its job of deporting these criminals. We will immediately begin the WSO process here in Florida, and it will be available to Florida sheriffs and county jails. The WSO program will also be available to county jails across the country in the near future. Now I'm going to turn it over to ICE Assistant Director David Marin for some remarks, and then followed by Lieutenant Governor Núñez.
Thank you, Sheriff. Good morning, and thank you to everyone for joining us for today's signing ceremony. On behalf of the men and women of U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, we also want to thank Florida Lieutenant Governor Jeanette Núñez and our law enforcement partners throughout the Sunshine State right here behind me, including Pinellas County Sheriff Bob Galtieri, for supporting this new program and its first participating jurisdiction. Now, cooperation throughout the law enforcement community has been a hallmark of the American criminal justice system since the early days of our nation's history. At a time when federal law enforcement resources are stretched in response to the humanitarian and security crisis along our southwestern border, we appreciate the opportunity to work even more closely with our local partners. The Warrant Service Officer Program is a common sense solution that encourages and protects much needed cooperation between law enforcement organizations at the federal, state, and local levels. We at ICE developed this new initiative in response to numerous requests from members of the National Sheriff's Association and the major county sheriffs of America. Though limited in scope, we believe it will be both useful and effective. For interested partners, including Sheriff Galtieri and the 40 officers who will soon be trained by ICE, the Warrant Service Officer Program will strengthen the security of their communities by ensuring the custody of criminal aliens in their jails are safely transferred to ICE so that we may initiate further removal proceedings in the safest possible way. The Warrant Service Officer Program will help protect communities and vulnerable populations from criminal aliens who, if released, are likely to continue criminal activity tied to street-level narcotics trafficking and the gang violence which so often targets and seeks to recruit young children. I am confident this program will have a positive impact on the safety and security of the people of Pinellas County, and I am hopeful it will inspire additional counties to participate. We look forward to training local deputies and officers from additional jurisdictions throughout Florida and across the country with the limited immigration enforcement authorities granted through the Immigration and Nationality Act. Participating in the Warrant Service Officer Program prevents the release of known criminal alien offenders back into the community, where the likelihood of additional criminal activity is statistically high. As anyone in law enforcement knows, whether serving a warrant, making an arrest, or transferring custody of an individual, doing so in the secure confines of a local jail is a much safer and orderly process. When officers are forced to conduct these lawful activities at large in the community, the risk to everyone involved, as well as those in proximity of the arrest, are unnecessarily high. This new initiative will reduce those risks and save lives. I look forward to sharing the results of our efforts as we expand the programs to additional jurisdictions here in Florida and throughout the United States. So thank you once again, all of you behind me, for your support and everybody in this room. And it's my honor to introduce Florida Lieutenant Governor Jeanette Núñez. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you all so much for being here. Governor DeSantis sends his regrets being unable to be here personally, but he is very excited about what we're going to do here today. Earlier this year, President Trump signed a sweeping executive order directing the Secretary of Homeland Security to increase coordination among the federal government and state and local law enforcement agencies in enforcing immigration laws. The governor and this administration has prioritized stronger coordination and cooperation between local and federal authorities to enforce our nation's immigration laws. The governor has taken several steps to enhance public safety by taking on illegal immigration. He charged the Florida Sheriff's Association to encourage their membership to increase cooperation in immigration enforcement by partnering with the federal government through programs like 287G and basic ordering agreements. He directed General Inch and the Florida Department of Corrections to review the 287G program and prepare a strategy to participate in the program at selected facilities. He called on the legislature to pass legislation this year that addresses sanctuary cities, and that bill is heading to the governor's desk. Today I'm joined by Sheriff Bob Gualtieri from Pinellas County, and first and foremost, I want to extend my congratulations. I understand that a few weeks ago, Sheriff Gualtieri, you were named Sheriff of the Year by the National Sheriff's Association for his exceptional contribution and service to law enforcement and his community, and that's a testament to your leadership over the past several years on this issue and many others. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Yes. Regarding immigration enforcement, Sheriff Gualtieri was instrumental in bringing the basic ordering agreements program that you heard him describe earlier, and organizing sheriffs across the state to join in cooperation with the federal government. And as he mentioned, we're here to announce an exciting new initiative to continue the focus of protecting our communities from criminal illegals. Today, Pinellas County becomes the first jurisdiction in the country to establish a warrant service officer program. And under this program, new officers are trained, certified, and authorized by ICE to serve and execute administrative warrants of arrest and serve warrants of removal against criminal aliens in a jail or correctional facility at the time of that criminal illegal's release. This gives a local officer the authority to transfer custody of a criminal illegal from the jail's jurisdiction to ICE. These are criminal illegals who are already in our jails serving time and who, upon completion of their time, will now be transferred to ICE for removal, as opposed to being released back into our communities. This is just one more tool in the toolbox to keep Floridians safe. I encourage other jurisdictions to follow the lead of Sheriff Gualtieri and Pinellas County and establish warrant service officers programs within their area. As I mentioned previously, Florida will always be a partner with the federal government in immigration enforcement under Governor DeSantis. In February, the governor directed Secretary of Department of Corrections, General Inch, to review our federal immigration programs and determine the best way for our department to participate in these programs. So I am pleased to announce that we have formally submitted our intent for the Department of Corrections to partner with the Department of Homeland Security and ICE. And further, we have identified the first correctional facility that will be joining our federal immigration efforts. So I'm now going to turn it over to our Corrections Secretary, General Inch, for him to share some additional details. Thank you very much.
Well, good morning. I'm privileged to represent the 24,000 men and women of the Florida Department of Corrections who have the awesome responsibility of the care and custody of over 95,000 inmates, as well as supervision of over 160,000 men and women under probation or parole. Coming new to the agency, I recognized we had a very good relationship with ICE, but look forward to the participation in the 287G Delegation of Authority program fully to improve the effectiveness and efficiency of our collaboration with ICE. It's an important program. All the initial steps, though we will not be signing today, the initial steps are very positive, and we look forward to, at a later time, signing the Memorandum of Understanding. So let me turn it, though, back to the focus of today and the leaders behind us that represent all the deputy sheriffs and the folks that work at our counties for the effort that we're going to see here. Thank you.
And now we'll hear from Sheriff Grady Judd, who's the president of Major County Sheriffs of America, followed by Jonathan Thompson from National Sheriffs. Sheriff Judd.
Thank you, Sheriff Gualtieri. I am the sheriff of Polk County, Florida, and also the current president of the Major County Sheriffs of America, representing over 100 million citizens in our different communities. And we're leading the way for a safer America, and that's why we're here today. I want to thank Sheriff Gualtieri, and I also want to thank ICE for their hard work to correct major issues that was thrust upon us by the federal courts that the sheriff has already explained. And I want to thank Governor DeSantis and our Lieutenant Governor for their continued support on this very important issue. Listen, folks, this Warrant Service Officer program is a return to the rule of law. We don't create the law, we don't interpret the law, but we took a solemn oath to enforce the law. Once again, we have clear direction, and with the WSO program, we'll be able to administer the ICE warrants for illegal criminal aliens, holding them accountable according to the law of the land, thus ridding not only our counties in Florida, but we can rid our counties and our communities across this nation of those illegally entering the country and committing criminal acts like drug trafficking. Think of this. According to the Florida Medical Examiners Commission, 2017, and that's the last report, complete report we have, but we know the data is increased in 2018, 858 people alone died in Florida as a direct result of the abuse of methamphetamine, not counting heroin, other opiates, 858. Now, why would you not want to hold those drug offenders liable? Why would you not want them in jail? Why would you not want to stop them from illegally coming across the border and dealing in drugs? So let me make this personal and tell you about a recent arrest just last week in Polk County where illegal aliens preyed upon our community. But don't think that these are isolated incidents. Sheriff Gualtieri gave you other incidents across this country that occurred. But I want you to understand what's happening every day. Last week, we culminated an arrest with the HIDTA agencies involved in Central Florida. On one operation, we seized over 50 pounds of meth, 25 kilos worth $1.4 million, $50,000 in cash and assets. We arrested 44 people. 30 of them were dealing in multi-kilos of meth and heroin. Of those 44, 9 were in the country illegally, and 2 arrived within 2 months of their arrest. So let me tell you about Aseshion Nahara. He was distributing meth. He's illegal. This is an illegal alien importing millions of dollars worth of methamphetamine and heroin from Mexico into our country. He brought it in. It went from Mexico to California and ultimately to our county. We also know that he spread this drug throughout the United States. So this is not just a Polk County problem or a Florida problem, but this is a national problem. Before his arrest, he had crossed the border 4 different times where he was documented and ultimately released. He self-deported back to Mexico so he could bring more drugs back to this country. In this one operation, this one sting, he was caught with 24 pounds. Another of the illegal aliens tried to sell 2 kilos of meth. Another one, 6.8 pounds of meth. But I'd be remiss if I didn't tell you about Ma Concepcion. Ma Concepcion Lopez was arrested in a different meth trafficking operation in 2014, where 25 suspects, and she was the leader, just like Aseshion was the leader. She was the leader of this operation. She was here illegally. She was directly displacing drugs from her possession into the communities. She was convicted. Oh, did I tell you she pled down? She pled down to a 3-year minimum mandatory in the state prison system. State prison system then worked with ICE to deport her, but she came back. When she came back, she took over head of our operation again, where we arrested her again. That's the rest of the story. But that was after she was first caught at the border and sent back to Mexico. So the border is porous, and we're not talking about that today, but we are talking about the thousands and thousands of pounds of marijuana, the thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds of methamphetamine, the thousands of pounds of heroin that's coming across this border. She pled this time to a 25-year minimum mandatory. Yes, Ma Concepcion is in our system, our state prison system. For the next 25 years, we as the local taxpayers get to pay that bill when she shouldn't be in this country at all. All of this is great expense to the taxpayers, but more so, people are dying in this country. And don't pay attention to anyone that tells you these are low-level, nonviolent drug offenses. Thousands of people in this country are dying every year. I want to thank Governor DeSantis, and I want to thank ICE, but most of all, I want to thank Sheriff Gualtieri, who crafted a solution to this problem last year, and we have even a better solution this year. Our goal is to keep the community safe. Our goal is to make sure that when you go out in the evening as law enforcement officers, that you go home to your family safe. Our goal is to make sure the people in this community can live, work, and play without these illegal aliens that are actively portraying and delivering their poison to our children who are subsequently dying. And this ICE agreement will go a long way with our abilities to stop the catch and release and make sure that they, one, do their prison time and then are put out of this country, hopefully forever. Thank you very much.
Good morning. I'm Jonathan Thompson. I'm the Executive Director for the National Sheriff's Association. On behalf of the 3,086 sheriffs across the country, the hundreds of thousands of deputies and jail operations officers, today is a milestone of significant proportion. Behind me is the essence of leadership for a nation. It is the essence of supporting the principle and perhaps the most important cornerstone of our nation. It is that of the rule of law. The leadership behind me today represents the Governor of Florida. Governor and Lieutenant Governor, thank you for being here. But I'd like the nation to look at these people behind me. It's the federal government, it's the state government, and it's the local law enforcement leaders that have stood here to focus on one simple issue, and that is to keep criminals off our nation's streets. As you just heard time and time again, there are men and women who are being victimized, and we forget about the victims in this country far too often. Those that have been victimized by people who are here in our country illegally, but they do so and they end up in our jail system and they end up in front of these deputies as criminals. This program is the culmination of many months' work with ICE and its leadership, with Sheriff Gualtieri and his insight and leadership, but also from the support from the governor, the lieutenant governor, and the Florida legislature. This is not an R issue or a D issue. This is not anything other than about keeping the communities safe, keeping criminals off our streets, and protecting those who expect nothing less than be able to get up every morning, go about their day, and do so without the threat of harm, without the importation of drugs, without the stealing and trafficking of humans across our state lines and across our national border. Ladies and gentlemen, I talk to the people of Florida. I urge you, support these men and women in law enforcement because they do represent the leadership that is so important to keeping our communities safe. I want to just leave you with one last thought. These are hard decisions sometimes, but the alternative is obvious, is that dangerous people, as Sheriff Grady has discussed, and it's not one or two, but it is thousands that come into our communities to do nothing but seek to destroy and undermine what we have in this nation. Again, it's not an R or a D issue. This is about our communities maintaining their safety and their confidence that the legal rights, the constitutional rights of our people and this nation are upheld and honored. On behalf of the sheriffs across this country, as you heard, Sheriff Gautieri was named the Sheriff of the Year recently. Bob, on behalf of your fellow sheriffs here and across the state and across the country, we owe you a debt of gratitude. Because of your dedication, your leadership, your drive, those many calls late at night between us and with ICE, I want to thank you. It's a great honor, and words really can't express to you and to the people of Florida, to the men and women of your own agency, and to your peers across the state, how important this is. And Governor, thank you. Sheriffs, God bless you all, and thank you, people of Florida.
Thank you, Jonathan. At this point, and I also, in doing introductory remarks, I forgot to mention my mistake. Sheriff Chris Nocco from Pasco County couldn't be here, but Major Stacy Jenkins is here on behalf of Sheriff Nocco, and she will sign the agreement on his behalf, as will the other sheriffs. So we'd ask now that the sheriffs who are going to sign the agreements take your seats at the table so you can sign those agreements. They've already been signed by Director Marin, so that once they are signed, that the basic components are in place for the warrant service officer position. So after we do the signing of the agreements, then we'll come back up and take any questions that you have. So sheriffs, if you would. And so if everybody wants, just go ahead and sign and date the agreement. All right, I believe all the sheriffs have had an opportunity to sign, so now we have fully executed warrant service officer agreements between these 11 sheriffs in Florida and ICE, and soon to be, hopefully, the remaining of the 67 counties in Florida. So with that, we'll take any questions you have. If you have specific questions for either Sheriff Judd, for Director Marin, for Executive Director Thompson, or myself, please direct them accordingly, and then they can come up. Or if you have any questions for any of the other sheriffs that are here, and you want to ask them specific questions, you're welcome to do that as well. So go ahead.
Sheriff, some of the concern from citizens and also people who are here illegally in the past has been that by the very nature of being here, they are breaking the law. So their concern is that if they get picked up for anything, or even if they try to perhaps even report a crime, that they are possibly going to fall under this. How do you address that, since it's crafted in a way that says if you are in this country and you are breaking the law, then you could be, people who are here illegally are already breaking the law.
Right. So in order for this to apply to you, you have to go out and commit a burglary, commit a robbery, commit some sort of a state law violation or something that you're arrested for that winds you up in a county jail. So if you're here illegally, and it's very complex, is that it may be criminal and it may not. All of this to do with removals and deportations, et cetera, is all a civil process. And this isn't about, again, I can't stress it strongly enough, and this is where it gets convoluted and it gets misstated, is that these are people that are committing state law violations. They've committed a crime, a robbery, a rape, a burglary, a theft, something, drug trafficking, and they end up in the county jail because, yes, they're here illegally, but they're committing crime and wreaking havoc in the community. And those are the people that we're talking about. This has nothing to do with any law enforcement officer going onto the street and asking somebody for their immigration status, for conducting an immigration investigation, witnesses a crime, et cetera. It has nothing to do with that.
Aren't the people that are local to the jail, aren't they innocent until they've been proven guilty? And aren't they some handed over to ICE before that process is complete?
Yeah, and what's the point, Tony? Is that, yeah, okay, so that they've been arrested on a state charge, and that state charge is on one path. If ICE determines that the person has entered the country illegally, overstayed, whatever it may be, and that they have probable cause for that person's removability, then they issue a detainer, and I'll let Director Marin speak to this, then we honor it. And it is ICE's decision, but it's because they're in the jail. It's two different paths. One is dealing with the state law charge, and of course, they're innocent until proven guilty. But that has nothing to do with whether or not there's a valid warrant and whether that warrant should be honored and whether that person should be held accountable for committing a crime and being here illegally. So it's two totally different things.
Are you and other sheriffs concerned that the Trump administration is lowering the bar to offenses like, driving without a license, things that the average person might say, you know what, maybe that's not someone who should be turned over to ICE?
No, because don't judge the book by the cover. Is that, and I'll let Director Marin speak more to this, but one of the things, and we talk about this regularly because this comes up regularly. So the two big myths in this that come up all the time. Number one is people say, so I'm just going to get it out now. People say that these are not, and it's probably your next question anyway, is that these are not judicial warrants. Well, if you don't like the fact that these are administrative warrants issued by ICE, then go to Congress and tell Congress to change the law. Because I can't say this strongly enough, I can't say it often enough, and I can't say it in any other way. Then the law does not allow a judge to issue these warrants. I mean, how much more clear can I be than that? But no.
A warrant that's not a judicial warrant and it's just being reviewed.
If you care about it, go to Congress. Go to the United States Supreme Court.
Sheriffs care about it.
No, I don't care about it because it's a valid warrant that the United States Congress has enacted a law. And again, like Sheriff Judge said, we don't make the law. We enforce the law and we adhere to the law. We don't interpret the law. So the law was made by the United States Congress. It was interpreted by the United States Supreme Court. And it said these are valid warrants. We don't get to say, well, and you shouldn't say, and any sheriff that's saying, or anybody say, well, I don't like the fact that these warrants are issued in a certain way and they're not issued by judges, so I'm not going to enforce it. That's not your prerogative. You don't get to make the law and you don't get to interpret the law. You get to enforce the law. And when it is a validly issued warrant and it has been upheld by the United States Supreme Court, you better enforce the law and obey that warrant. So what's the issue? I mean, is that it's very simple. And just because people don't like it, because it doesn't feel right, then go to Congress and get it changed. But until then, is that we have an obligation. And as to the risk on the other side, and I'll let any of these other sheriffs that want to speak to this speak to it. They can speak to it. All day long, every day, I'm going to, if you will, come down on the side, and some may say err on the side. I don't consider erring on the side of anything. I consider doing the right thing on public safety and community safety and making sure that the people in this county, at least, are not a victim of crime by a criminal illegal. A Kate Steinley situation, if I have anything to say about or do about, will not happen in this county. A Sergio Martinez will not happen in this county. I won't have one of our deputies shot by a guy, like what happened in February in California, because they don't obey the law in California. And have a deputy shot at by a guy who was removed 3 times previously, who was here illegally, who a jail let out because they didn't want to honor the detainer. All day, every day, is I'm going to follow the law and uphold the rule of law and turn these people over to ICE so they can get them out of here. Every day, all day. And as you said about people who are arrested on, quote, minor crime. Well, just because somebody was arrested today in Pinellas County, Levy County, Columbia County, wherever, on a suspended driver's license charge, when ICE gets that person's fingerprints and they issue the detainer and the warrant, is that there's a backstory to that as well. We don't know the backstory. ICE knows the backstory. And that person may have been removed a plethora of times previously. They may have an extensive criminal history. There may have been a reason why that warrant in the 205 stays in existence for perpetuity, and it could have been because of a robbery in Kansas City years ago. We don't know that, and I'm not going to take a chance. And so if you're here illegally, and you're one of those estimated 13 million people that are here illegally, don't commit a crime. If you're here illegally and you commit crime, then yes, this could apply to you. So it's real simple. If you're here illegally, don't commit crime. And if you are here, we're not going to have people in this community that are hurting others when they are here illegally and wreaking havoc. Director Marin, you want to add anything to that at all?
You know what? Thank you very much, Sheriff. I think he put it very clearly, right? The only thing that we're asking sheriffs to do, everything's within the law, right? The laws were the same in the past administration and the administration before that. All we're asking is to help us enforce the law. Again, if people don't like the law, then you know what, go to Congress and change it. When we talk about people that come into our custody, the person that gets a ticket for a moving violation, they don't have their fingerprints taken. You know, it's individuals that actually commit a crime that are brought to a law enforcement facility and they're booked in. That's how we find out about people. We're not asking sheriffs to go out and to conduct immigration investigations. They're not asking people, you know what, if they have a right to be here. The only thing that we're asking is once we've determined that person is somebody that we're interested in, that person's been ordered deported before, or that person has been convicted of a crime that makes them eligible to be removed, then we're asking the sheriffs to honor that detainer, serve that warrant, to let that person know that ICE has an interest in them. That's all that we're asking. Because again, it's our job to enforce the laws. So we think as we have these partners here, that helps us, not only as a force multiplier, but the main point here is to keep the community safe. If that person commits a crime and we're not notified, and it's somebody that we can remove, they're gonna go back out into the community and possibly commit more crimes. Why can't we, together as law enforcement agencies, be able to identify those people while they're in custody?
Sheriff, does the sheriff's office basically
Let me just add one quick thing. You know, every day across the country, local law enforcement participates and supports the federal agencies in law enforcement. U.S. Marshals, across the board, you'll see U.S. Marshals or the FBI or DEA come into these sheriff's offices and participate with them. This is no different. This is absolutely no different. It provides them a legal and a constitutionally safe way to protect those rights. Bottom line, keeping criminals off the street. If they broke a law, they hurt somebody, they left a victim in their wake, they're now going to find a way to be arrested and deported. That's it.
Sheriff, I'm sorry, I wanted to ask, basically, just like who has the discretion type of question? Like, if it's for example, a jaywalking offense.
Stop there.
No,
You're not getting
I'm
booked into the
asking.
jail on a jaywalking offense. Okay, that's part of the problem with this. Because now you got people out there thinking that if you get a traffic ticket or if you get a pedestrian violation, you got to commit a crime. You have to get booked into the jail. And so how it works, when you commit a crime, not speeding, not a stop sign violation, and not your jaywalking example, when you commit a crime and you get booked into the jail and your fingerprints are taken, your fingerprints are automatically sent up to the FBI. There's a work sharing agreement between ICE and the FBI. The prints go over to ICE. ICE looks at it, and they go through a determination process. And they make a determination whether they have probable cause as it relates to this person, and they go through their selection process, and if Director Marin wants to speak to that, he can, and that they are prioritizing, they are making decisions. Is that there are about 150,000 detainers issued a year in the United States, about 9,000 here in Florida, but ICE gets millions, literally millions of queries or prints. They're not issuing detainers in every case. They're going through a selection process. There is criteria, and they have limited bandwidth and limited resources, so they're trying to get the worst of the worst, but it isn't always apparent on the surface as to who the worst of the worst are to us, because we don't have access to that information. So we have to rely on them, and they're making their determinations. And every day, all day, is that if ICE issues that warrant with that detainer, then we need to honor that warrant because it's been lawfully issued and it needs to be served. Do you want to expand on that at all, or is there anything you want to?
What is the bar? If you can comment on what the bar is, so people understand, because you cited some pretty extreme cases, but, you know, there's, the ACLU just came out with a report that indicated that there are people with very minimal criminal histories or none at all that are still being targeted by detainers, and I wanted to ask you to comment on that because that was just recently released.
Right, so establishing probable cause, that's the main thing. We're not just going to place a detainer on somebody because we have no record and because they're foreign born. Maybe they stated they were born in Mexico and we have no record of them, right? Without actually interviewing that person. So when we're establishing probable cause, if we have a record of that individual, you know, being previously deported, being, you know, in front of an immigration judge and having that immigration order, right? And even if they have committed, you talk about maybe it's a minor crime or they was arrested, still, they committed a crime and they've come to our attention. And again, maybe they do have a final order. Maybe they have been removed before. There is individuals that don't have any crimes that have been removed before. They've had their opportunity in front of the judge. They've been lawfully ordered removed by an immigration judge, and maybe they didn't leave the country. Maybe that order was 10 years ago. Maybe that order was 5 years ago, right? But it's our job to enforce the law. And because we don't have the resources to go after every single person that's been ordered deported, but when that person gets arrested for a crime and they get, again, booked in and we're notified of that, we have to take action again, right? That's what Congress has empowered us to do, and that's what we will continue to do. Can we arrest everybody that's been ordered deported? We just don't have the bandwidth. There are an estimated 13 million. We don't have the resources to arrest every single one of those, but the ones that have committed crimes, those are the immediate threat to the community. They've either committed a crime or they've been convicted of a crime. Those are the ones that we feel that we need to put our immediate attention on. And thanks to the sheriffs and this program, the WSO program, that's going to allow us to respond to those kind of community threats immediately.
What'd you hear a common theme? Sergio Martinez, how many times? 20. I mean, what doesn't he understand? Get out means get out, stay out, and don't come back 20 times. This guy a couple months ago out in California who shoots at this deputy, he'd been deported 3 times previously. The other one that Sheriff Judd mentioned is that multiple prior deportations. So what are we supposed to do? Just, okay, well, here, go out on the street and wreak havoc again? It ain't not gonna happen.
The critics of the process say that those type of criminals should be allowed to stay and not be entered into this process. The concern is that the net is going to be so wide that there are going to be people that are either citizens or low-level offenders or with no criminal history.
If people are concerned about the law, they need to go about 900 miles north of here, the U.S. Capitol, and talk to Congress. And until Congress has the wherewithal to address the dilemma that is illegal immigration, then we all are going to do everything we can within our power to ensure our communities are as safe as they can possibly be. And make no mistake, there's nothing perfect. But we're doing the best we can in the name of public safety and to ensure that all these examples don't happen again. And if people don't like it, talk to Congress. Congress won't act because Congress doesn't have the fortitude to make these decisions.
Sure. Along the vein that you were talking about with taxpayer responsibility to the taxpayer, and the parallel roads that were going on, if somebody is taken into custody on a crime, God forbid, you know, that they're involved in some sort of a DUI accident that takes a lot, whatever it might be, and the government comes and says, the federal government comes and says, that person should be deported. What happens to the jail time, if you will, that person should have been serving for a crime that was committed? How does the person or the surviving family members of the victim of that crime see justice if that person is deported? And if they're not going to be deported and they serve time here, how is that saving the taxpayer any money at all?
Well, if I understand your question, is that and this is to the Sheriff Judge's point, is that when he mentioned that these people are sitting here and they're sitting in state prison, ICE isn't picking these people up until they're done with their sentence. Is that what your question is?
Yes, because the issue was brought up that, well, if those people weren't sitting in prison, those people are sitting in prison costing taxpayers money.
Right.
But this doesn't solve that. They will see out the time.
Right, and then under this is that we'll see to it that ICE has the ability to take them into custody and removes them or deports them again. But sadly, what does history tell us, is they're going to come back anyway. So yeah, they're going to do their state time, and if they get sentenced, and you're dealing with two different categories here. You're dealing with people that have been arrested on a charge, and they go to bond out. And if ICE issues the detainer and the warrant, then we're going to turn them over to ICE, and ICE is going to begin removal proceedings and go through their process. So, but also the other category are people that have been sentenced, and then when they're done with their sentence, then we turn them over to ICE and they go through removal. But it doesn't solve it, because they are still going to be here and they're still going to serve their time. So all this is that we're just not.
About that. I've heard that during campaigns, and I've kind of heard that today, was that when somebody gets arrested for committing a crime here in the United States, we're going to throw them out of the country because it's expensive to keep them here. We have to pay for that anyway, don't we? They have to be, they're going to be in the prison system in due time.
Right, I mean, they are going to, if they bond out and they haven't been adjudicated in the charge, we're going to turn them over to ICE. ICE is going to begin their process. But if they've been sentenced, they're going to do their time, and then we're going to turn them over to ICE, and ICE is going to begin removal proceedings. You know, there is, these people who are here, who are committing crimes and repeatedly committing crimes, there's no question that they're a burden. And you can look at the numbers that are out there. There's a significant number of people in the federal bureau prisons that are serving sentences that are here illegally, and as soon as those sentences are up, they're going to remove them. So that doesn't, this has really nothing to do with that issue. This is a fact that if they're here, they're committing crime, they're going to go to jail. It costs money to house people in jail. I mean, it's that simple. Yeah, go ahead.
How many of your deputies are going to be a part of this program? And also, will they be in charge of transporting these people to ICE detention cells?
Yeah, so in Pinellas County, we're going to have deputized at least 40 right off the bat, so that we ensure that we have at least one and hopefully more deputies on duty at any given time, 24/7, so that when we get these detainers and the warrants from ICE, that somebody's always available to serve the warrant. And so there'll always be one on duty here. So we're going to do 40. I imagine the other sheriffs have their numbers based upon the size of their agencies and their jails. And but that's what we're going to begin with here.
Sheriff, when does this program start, and is there anyone in the Pinellas County Jail right now that would fall under this program that would be sent or taken into ICE custody, and for all the sheriffs actually?
So it begins now. We've signed the agreement, and hopefully within the next couple of weeks at the latest is that we'll get the training done. It's a one-day training, and then these deputies will be able to serve the warrants. But this is only one, although I believe it's the best solution. This is only one of several available solutions to allow us to lawfully honor the warrants and the detainers. And we're doing that now, and we have for the last several years. So we have several people that are currently in the Pinellas County Jail that have ICE detainers who we are holding because we book them in under the basic ordering agreement process. And we'll continue to do that in conjunction with the Warrant Service Officer program. So there are a number of ways to accomplish this, but again, the Warrant Service Officer program is probably the best way legally, and we look forward to getting it up and running as soon as we can.
Questions. So are there people right now who could fall under this program?
Yes.
Okay. And then the other question, you talked about it being legally. Has anyone, do you think anyone would try to challenge this even as discriminatory?
I see this as unchallengeable. The basic ordering agreement that we announced a year ago is a very solid program. We've been doing it here in Pinellas County for over 3 years. We haven't been sued once. And as I said to the ACLU and others, if you got it, bring it. You ain't got it, you ain't bringing it, okay? Because we've been doing it for 3 years. It is legally sound. But can somebody color a claim, bring a claim? Can you? Yeah, you could probably get in the front door of the courthouse. But with this, you're not getting in the front door of the courthouse because there's only two questions. First question, number one, is there a warrant? Is the warrant lawful? Hands down, the warrant is lawful. The United States Supreme Court has said these warrants are lawful. Number two is the person who served the warrant authorized to serve it? Under Title 8 of the U.S. Code, Section 1357, what people call 287G, is that ICE can deputize these deputies, and once they're deputized, they can serve the warrants, and so there's no question. So there's only two questions. Is there a warrant, can you serve it? Yes to both, you're done. So there is no issue.
Director, do you believe you'll see an increase, I guess a twofold question. Has the Department of Homeland Security and/or ICE conducted a study to sort of prognosticate what kind of deportation numbers might result from a program like this? And then secondly, if so, do you expect a certain amount of increase percentage-wise or what have you in the number of deportations?
So there's several factors that come into that, especially dealing with our immigration judges and some of the back-end process. Now, you heard us talk about numbers, over 9,000 detainers here in Florida. Florida's been a very cooperative state, been able to help us to get these criminal aliens off the street. So yeah, we do expect to see an increase. I think maybe we'll, after the first maybe 6 months to a year, we will do a, maybe put out some numbers to see where we are. But again, the focus here is just bringing those criminal aliens to us, and then we'll of course take the appropriate steps next, whether it's to remove them from the country, or again, some of these may have an opportunity to see an immigration judge, to have their immigration process, right, which that sometimes takes 2, 3, sometimes 10 years. So we might not see immediate results, but I think what's important is what we're going to see is that those people that are eligible for removal, for taking off the streets, that they're going to come to our custody quicker, because now we're going to have the resources, again, in using our partners who, again, they're simply just serving that warrant to let that person know, serving that detainer and serving that warrant to let that person know ICE has placed a detainer on you, and they've placed a warrant. When we're done with you, you're going to go into ICE custody.
Do these special deputies transport them?
Yeah, so what, there's an intersection here between what we're doing and Senate Bill 168, which is been passed by the legislature and is now sitting with the governor. And we anticipate, based on his statements over the weekend, that he is going to sign it. When the governor signs 168 into law, it will allow state and local law enforcement within the last 12 days of an inmate's incarceration to transfer custody to ICE, and that we can then transport them to an ICE facility. So the way it works today is ICE comes to the county jails or the State Department of Corrections facilities, and ICE picks up these inmates. But as soon as the new law takes effect, I envision that we will be working with ICE and that we will be transporting some of these people to ICE so that they can be timely transferred. Yeah.
You know, one of the beauties of the federalism system in this country is that every jurisdiction is different, as you can see by the sheriffs that are sitting here. But every state is different too. So it's important to recognize that what Florida has done, and as I said earlier, is the essence of leadership. But states do differ, and they will have different requirements for each of those jurisdictions.
So anybody else? Yep.
Sorry. Sheriff, how would enacting this have changed any of the circumstances or examples that you gave?
What this does is it cleans up the federal courts. We were holding these folks, and the federal courts came out and said, time out, you can't hold them. That's when Sheriff Gualtieri led the charge for the Florida sheriffs and the national sheriffs, and we worked with ICE and created BOA. And from BOA, then we have the WSO today, which makes it even that much better and that much easier for us. But the reality of it is, you know, we're all tangled up around the axle on this. You've got to understand that the overwhelming majority of the people in this country don't get arrested. You know why? Because they behave, they go to work, they take care of the kids, they go to church on Sunday, they go to Little League, they go to soccer. We're talking about people who actively go out and work hard at getting arrested. Oh, and by the way, they're already here illegally. And the majority of the people that we're going to deal with in this program come here to commit crime. They don't come here and they're illegal and whoops, they get caught, okay? So the majority of the people that we arrest won't come here illegally and behave and just happen to get arrested for driving without a license. The majority of them we deal with come here and actively commit crime, and that's the examples that I gave you today. Why? Because they're moving millions of dollars worth of meth and heroin across that porous border. Ma Concepcion pled down to a 3-year minimum mandatory. She was running a multi-kilo operation at the time. So the state allowed her to plead down. She got her a great deal. She did 3 years. We paid for that. As soon as she was finished, we deported her. She tried to get back. They caught her at the border and she didn't come in. But the next time she did. And she ended up back here doing the same exact thing again. She came here to commit crime, to sell large quantities of meth. Now we've got her for a 25-year minimum mandatory. Had we been successful in deporting her on the 3-year minimum mandatory and keeping her there, you know, but it's like the border is like trying to stop water with a strainer.
I don't think there's any question about the porousness of the border. My question was, how would this prevent that?
This gives us the tool to make sure that they are, one, while they're in custody, turned over to Immigrations and Customs. There are places in this country today, and they should be ashamed of themselves, who have arrested illegal aliens for violent and dangerous criminal acts, and then will not notify ICE that they're in custody, and then release them. So ICE has to go out and expend the extra labor to recatch them. And at the same time, we know that the community is subjected to more of their violent criminal activity. So what this does, this is a tool to assist ICE and assist us, because we can now, once again, turn them over easier to ICE's custody while they're here. So it is only a tool. It doesn't change what we've done for decades. It just makes it easier and lawful after the courts ruled against us a few years ago.
But that wasn't the case in the examples specifically that you gave today, correct? Those people were turned over to ICE at one point.
They were turned over. The example I gave standing behind this podium last time was the guy who was arrested 4 times for driving without or driving on a suspended license, and he was here illegally. 4 times we reported him to ICE, okay? The 5th time that he was driving illegally, he ran over and killed somebody on a scooter, okay? He shouldn't have been here. 4 different times he should have been gone. Had he been gone, the man on the scooter that died and would have been alive. And you know what? Dead is forever, unlike deportation.
Sheriff, you have a pretty high migrant population in Polk. Are you concerned that and I understand this is not a street-based program, this is only jail-based. Are you concerned in the wake of the SB 168 passing and the cooperation, increased cooperation between local law enforcement agencies and ICE, that there's at least a perception among migrant communities, undocumented, law-abiding, undocumented folks who are concerned that, you know, that you're out to get them, basically, that, you know, and again, perception versus, I know it's perception versus reality, and that could, you know, prevent them from reporting crime or cooperating with investigations?
Yes, we have a remarkably good communication with our migrant population. And in fact, we do outreach programs to them on a normal basis, weekly basis, sometimes a daily basis. They have a clear understanding that if they come here illegally and commit crime, that we're going to not only arrest them, but then we're going to notify ICE and hold them for ICE as the law allows. if they come here illegally, and ICE's normal process is a civil deportation, okay, which amounts to, in our state world, as a traffic citation. If they come here and they work hard, and they go to the Little League parks and the soccer fields, and they take care of their children and put them in school, and they're law-abiding citizens, they know they don't have any fears from us. That's not our job. We don't round up people. We make everyone feel comfortable in our community. But make no mistake about it, there's a clear understanding. We support them. We don't want them to be victims. We see them as being victims more often because those that are here illegally to commit crime are threatening them and say, you can't go to the police. You can't tell the sheriff. Well, we go back out in the community and tell those that are here, it's not our concern whether or not you have a civil issue with the federal government. Our concern is that you're safe in this community, and we reinforce that. And they understand clearly. If you're here to deal or traffic in meth, if you're here to rob stores or shoot people, you got problems with us. So at the end of the day, this is only our ability to hold them for ICE and serve the ICE warrants after they're in jail. Never, ever, ever, ever have we or will we go into the communities where people live, work, and play. That's the federal government's responsibility.
You know, and Tony, you know, I am concerned about it. I'm concerned about it here, but you know what concerns me more is why the last few weeks I had to sit there and watch members of the Florida legislature on the floor of the Florida Senate and on the floor of the Florida House of Representatives just make false statements and mislead people. And they're the ones in these non-governmental organizations, these advocacy groups, that are running around telling people that they are going to have to be afraid and be concerned about law enforcement because law enforcement's going to be out on the street doing all of these things when that is absolutely not the truth. So my question is, in response to your question, is why are they doing that? Why are they fear-mongering? Why are they spreading false information? Why are they standing up there, and I got to listen to this in the debates in the Florida legislature when you have representatives and senators that are saying that this is going to turn it into a situation where witnesses of crime are going to be afraid and victims are going to be afraid. They're creating that. They're creating that by making inaccurate and false statements about what this is and what it's not. They need to stop because it is a concern. We don't want anybody to be afraid to call the police. We don't want the person who's been here for 20 years, who's got a job, who's got kids in school, here illegally and even pays taxes. We don't want them to be concerned about calling us. We don't want them to be concerned about talking to a cop. But it's because of that false information that perception occurs. We're not creating that perception. We're not perpetuating it. It's others who are doing it, and it's wrong. They need to stop that. They're the ones that are causing the problem.
Let me just add one thing, is that when call centers, 911 call centers receive that call, the operator doesn't say, before you begin, let me ask you, are you a man or a woman? Are you Asian, African American? Are you here legally or illegally? That's not what happens. What their agencies do is they respond, regardless of who's calling on the other end of that phone.
All right, so we take like one more. Go ahead.
Just wanted to know, will they primarily work as WSOs or will they have other duties like that?
No. I mean, the warrant service officer classification is a absolute collateral responsibility. So these are deputy sheriffs that work in the jail. They'll go about their business. They'll do their job every single day. But when that person is booked in and we do get the warrant and it needs to be served, then they're the ones that will be called on to actually serve the warrant. So it costs us nothing. They're here, they're doing their job. These are not specific dedicated positions. It's a collateral responsibility.
So they're not new positions?
No new positions, no money, no anything. All it is, and again, it's really cost-free for the training because it's one day, it's here, ICE is coming here to do it. Hopefully we can do some regional training, bring it all together. And so there's no expense to us for this at all. So. All right, well, again, thanks to everybody for being here. Thanks to all the sheriffs for participating, and we appreciate it. Thank you.